Welcome to the Hindu Daily. Hello, and welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're unpacking insights from across the paper, the editorial pages, the opinion sections, science, and text and context. We'll cover constitutional tussles, global crises, tech ethics, health discoveries, and judicial moves. Our goal, as always, is to see how big principles clash with, well, messy realities. Let's jump straight into the first piece from the editorial section. It's about the governor's powers here in India. The Supreme Court's been taking a close look at Article 200, hasn't it? Specifically, how governors give assent to bills passed by states.
That's right. And there was this quite significant recent ruling from a two-judge bench, Justice Pardiwala presiding. They set a 3-month timeline.
A timeline for governors and the president, too.
Yes, exactly, for acting on bills. And that's really caused a stir, in government circles and the media.
Because the Constitution itself, it doesn't actually specify a time frame, does it?
No, it doesn't. It's silent on that point. So for the court to step in and impose one, especially stretching it to the president, well, some see it as the judiciary moving into an area the framers maybe deliberately left open.
Or just didn't specify. It raises those classic separation of powers questions.
Definitely.
And it's not like the governor just says yes or no. Article 200 gives them, 4 options?
4 distinct paths, yes. Give assent bill becomes law. Withhold assent bill dies. Return it for reconsideration.
Or reserve it for the president, which is a big one.
It really highlights the governor's position right there in the legislative process.
Which brings us to the heart of it. Does the governor have discretion in making that choice?
The million-dollar question. Article 163 generally says the governor acts on the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers.
That's the standard principle.
It is. And landmark cases, from Shamshir Singh way back in '74 up to Nabam Rebia in 2016, plus bodies like the Sarkaria and Punchy commissions. They've all reinforced this. The governor is a constitutional head.
Not an independent executive.
Precisely. Their role is meant to be facilitative, not obstructive, of the elected government's will.
And there's that fascinating historical bit, too. Comparing Article 200 to the Old Government of India Act, 1935.
Section 75 of that act, yes. It explicitly mentioned the governor in his discretion.
And our Constitution deliberately leaves that phrase out.
It does. Which strongly suggests the framers intended to limit, maybe even eliminate, that kind of independent power for the governor in this context. It wasn't an accident.
A conscious choice to shift power.
Exactly. Towards a parliamentary system. But, judicial interpretation hasn't always been perfectly straight. Shamshir Singh did find some room for discretion under Article 200, strangely enough.
But more recently?
More recently, like in the state of Tamil Nadu versus the governor case, just this year, 2025, the court flatly rejected that idea.
Saying it could make the governor a kind of super constitutional figure.
Yes, someone who could just halt the entire legislative work of a state. Even D.D. Basu, looking at the UK, argues against discretion. The Sarkaria Commission saw it only for rare and exceptional cases. It's meant to be the exception, not the rule.
So if the constitutional thinking mostly leans against discretion, why the timeline now? What changed?
Practical reality, I think. You had this situation where governors were, frankly, sitting on bills for years together.
Leaving important state laws just stuck in limbo.
Exactly. A situation the Constitution clearly doesn't allow for. And think about Article 355, the union's duty to ensure states are governed constitutionally.
You're saying the union should have stepped in?
Arguably, yes. When the governor just stalls the process like that, it's a potential breach. But the union often hasn't intervened.
So the Supreme Court's timeline is a kind of remedy.
A remedy for what is now a reality, as the article puts it. It's interpreting the existing rules to meet a new challenge. A bit like how Article 21, the right to life, has been expanded over the years.
Adapting the Constitution to current problems.
Right. Upholding the spirit when the letter is being, maybe, misused.
And these recent rulings, like the Punjab case and the Tamil Nadu one, they're being seen as quite important for federalism, aren't they?
Definitely. Striking a blow for federalism, reinforcing that state-center balance.
So for you listening, it really makes you think. What does this shifting view of the governor mean for the power balance between your state government and the center? And maybe more importantly, how laws actually get made where you live? It's fundamental.
Okay, let's pivot now. From domestic constitutional debates to a tense global issue, also covered in the editorial section today, we're talking about Iran and what's being called a new nuclear crisis taking shape.
Yes, things have escalated quite dramatically. You had those U.S. strikes on the Fordo facility back in June.
And then just recently, August 28th, the E3, that's Britain, France, Germany, triggered the snapback clause of the 2015 nuclear deal.
Citing Iranian violations, and snapback is serious. It's designed to automatically bring back UN sanctions if Iran breaches the deal.
That sounds like incredibly high stakes. Oh, enormous. If no agreement is reached, the UN would restore those previous measures. Halting enrichment, tightening arms controls, hitting finance, shipping.
And everyone sees it differently, I imagine.
Completely. Iran rejects it, naturally. Washington sees it as a non-proliferation test. Europe's focused on multilateralism. Russia and China are looking for leverage.
And then Israel, the Gulf states, worrying about war, and the rest of us watching oil prices.
It's a complex web with huge potential fallout.
One really concerning aspect highlighted is this vacuum of facts. After the strikes, there's been no verified info.
Right. The IAEA inspectors, the international monitors, they left Iran. So you get rumor replacing actual measurement, which is dangerous.
Why is that IAEA access so critical then?
Well, simply put, it replaces guesswork with facts. It gives everyone a reliable baseline of what Iran's actually doing, which is essential for any negotiation.
Like they did in Ukraine with Zaporizhia.
Providing clarity. Exactly. It helps manage expectations, calm speculation. And framing it as a sovereign choice for Iran is key. It lets them show transparency about their civilian program claims without looking like they're just giving in.
Though you can see Iran's side too, they worry inspectors might, even accidentally, help target sites.
They do have those concerns, yes. And they point to past strikes happening after IAEA disclosures. It makes their internal politics very difficult.
And that difficulty is pushing things towards a dangerous edge. Some Iranian legislators talking about leaving the NPT.
That's the worry. Withdrawing from the Non-Proliferation Treaty would be, well, uncharted territory. Sanctions would bite harder, and the talk of military options would definitely increase.
So where does India sit into this picture? The article says India cannot stand aside.
India's in a unique position. It's on the IAEA board, has ties with everyone involved, the U.S., Europe, Russia, Iran, and it joined SKO nations in condemning military strikes.
So what can India realistically do?
It can use its influence, particularly within SKO and BRICS, to advocate for restoring that IAEA access. Help frame it as that sovereign choice, protecting details, but ensuring transparency.
Any technical role?
Potentially. India has technical expertise, like the Tarapur facility for analyzing samples under safeguards. Quiet diplomacy, technical support. It could make a difference.
Is there any sign of hope, any diplomatic movement?
There was what the article calls a small opening. Iran let IAEA inspectors into Bushehr recently, and there was apparently an agreement signed in Cairo on September 9th.
So maybe a step back from the brink.
Potentially. If that Cairo agreement leads to access at the bomb sites, maybe the E3 pauses the snapback. That would shift momentum back to diplomacy.
And the alternative?
The alternative is described as grim. Which really makes you think, doesn't it? How does India navigating this global tightrope affect your energy security, your world stability? It's all connected.
Okay, from global diplomacy, let's bring it right back home to an issue explored in the opinion section today. It touches on technology, dignity, and welfare. There's this great reference to Kurt Vonnegut's Player Piano.
Right, where automation ends up dehumanizing people.
And the article draws a parallel to what's happening with India's Anganwadis. These centers are crucial, established back in '75, for child nutrition, providing take-home rations, THR, to vulnerable women and kids. It's a legal right.
But now we see this push for technology described as an engineer's paradise. The government rolled out the Poshan Tracker app, and then from July 1st, mandated facial recognition software, FRS, for THR beneficiaries.
FRS, after they already had eKYC with Aadhaar and biometric.
Exactly, another layer of digital identification.
And the stated reason for FRS is?
Officially, it's twofold. Stop beneficiaries faking identities, and stop Anganwadi workers, the AWWs, supposedly stealing food, basically tackling fraud.
But the critique is quite strong, isn't it?
Very strong. The core argument is that it presupposes guilt, assuming people will cheat, which goes against natural justice.
And practically, how's it working out?
Reports from AWWs paint a picture of, well, chaos. Phone numbers change, people don't trust OTPs, faces don't match the system, phones aren't good enough, network is patchy.
Leading to delays and people not getting food.
Exactly. Even when the worker knows the person and knows they need the rations, the system blocks it. It's creating digital hurdles to essential aid.
What's also striking is the argument that FRS isn't even tackling the real problems with THR.
Right. The big issues identified are things like poor food quality, irregular supply, low budgets, corruption in contracts, lack of local control. FRS doesn't fix any of that.
So the tech feels misplaced.
Misdirected, yes. And there's a deeper point, using technology designed for catching criminals on vulnerable people seeking aid. It risks treating them like criminals, not citizens with rights. It erodes dignity.
And FRS is controversial elsewhere too, right? Banned in some places.
Yes, even in San Francisco, a tech hub, it's banned due to privacy and civil liberties concerns.
So it really forces a choice, as the article puts it, between authenticating and the authentic, between dehumanizing and dignity.
And between fracturing and fraternity.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you, the listener, question, does pushing for tech efficiency always help welfare recipients? Or can it actually take away dignity and create new barriers? A really fundamental question about tech and society.
Let's switch gears now to the science section. A fascinating piece about infectious diseases, specifically dengue. We know mosquito-borne diseases are rising globally, urbanization, climate change, travel.
All contributing factors, yes. Dengue is a major threat.
But this study throws in an unexpected twist. It seems waning immunity to a different virus, Japanese encephalitis virus, or JEV, can actually make dengue more severe.
That's the really surprising connection. JEV and dengue are related. Both are orthoflaviruses. And there were hints before that JEV immunity might affect dengue, but this study really nails it down.
How did they study it? The location sounds quite specific. Dharan, Nepal.
Yes, Dharan was key. Nepal had a very successful JEV vaccination program starting 2006, so lots of people had JEV immunity. But, crucially, they had very little dengue exposure until recently.
Ah, so it created a kind of natural experiment.
Exactly. It let the researchers isolate the effect of JEV immunity on dengue severity without the complication of previous dengue infections muddying the waters.
Yeah.
You know, the antibody-dependent enhancement issue.
Clever setup. And the results. They followed hundreds of patients. Right?
546 dengue patients across 3 outbreaks. They tested for everything: virus types, immune markers, and this enzyme called chymase.
Chymase. Why is that important?
It's been validated as a really reliable biomarker for severe dengue. Higher chymase means higher risk of severe disease.
And the findings were published in a major journal, Science Translational Medicine.
Yes, indicating the significance. And the results were, well, striking, as you said. About 61% of patients had prior JEV antibodies.
Okay, that's expected given the vaccination.
Right. But here's the crucial part. People with JEV immunity had significantly higher chymase levels, meaning potentially more severe dengue.
Wait, JEV immunity made dengue worse.
Not quite that simple. It was specifically linked to mid-range anti-JEV antibody levels around a titer of 1.160. Not too low, not too high.
A vulnerable middle zone.
Exactly. In that specific group, the risk of dengue fever with warning signs was 3 times higher. And remember, these were mostly primary dengue infections. So it strongly supports JEV immunity itself as a factor modulating dengue severity.
That's incredible. This middle zone idea, it reminds me of similar findings with Zika and dengue, right? Where moderate antibody levels can enhance, but high levels protect.
Precisely. It suggests that as JEV immunity naturally fades over time in a population, people can enter this risky phase.
Which has huge implications for places like India.
Huge. Across Asia, really. JEV vaccination is common. Dengue is spreading fast due to climate change, warmer weather, longer monsoons. India really needs to factor this in.
But just to be clear, this doesn't mean JE vaccination is bad, right?
Yeah, absolutely not. JE vaccination has been a massive public health success, drastically cutting JE cases. That's crucial to emphasize.
So what's the practical takeaway? What does the study suggest?
It suggests a really smart dual-purpose strategy. Timely JE vaccine boosters.
Boosters to keep JEV immunity high.
Exactly, to maintain durable protection against JE and to prevent those antibody levels from dropping into that vulnerable mid-range where they might worsen dengue. It's preventative maintenance for immunity.
And keep using chymase as a diagnostic tool.
Yes, to help doctors spot patients at higher risk of severe dengue early on.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? Viruses respect no borders. This work really shows we need integrated thinking in disease control.
Absolutely. Moving beyond tackling just one virus at a time.
It prompts the question for all of us. How does understanding these complex virus interactions change how we think about vaccine strategies? And what can health systems do proactively to protect you from these linked threats? Okay, for our final piece today, we're heading to the text and context section. Back to the Supreme Court again, with an interim order from September 15th on the Waqf Amendment Act, 2025.
Right. The court didn't suspend the whole act, but it did put a hold on several quite contentious provisions. This was the bench with CJI Gavai and Justice Masih.
And just to remind listeners, Waqf is essentially a charitable endowment under Islamic law property dedicated for religious or philanthropic use.
Correct. Mosques, schools, graveyards, things like that.
So the government amended the act, saying it was for streamlining, transparency.
That was the stated intent, better administration. But critics saw it very differently, as the state extending control over religious institutions that had historically been autonomous.
And the challenge came from a wide range of people.
Yes. Notably, MPs from various opposition parties, AIM, TMC, RJD, YSR Congress, CPI, it showed broad concern across the political spectrum.
What were their main legal arguments against the act?
Several key grounds. Infringement on Article 26, the right to manage religious affairs. They called the 5-year practicing Muslim requirement for board members arbitrary.
They also objected to the district collector getting more power.
Yes, arguing it usurped the role of civil courts, blurring the separation of powers, and allowing non-Muslims on Waqf boards, they argued, clashed with Article 30, protecting minority institutions.
How did the government defend the changes? The Solicitor General.
The defense focused on transparency, accountability, reducing litigation, promoting inclusivity, and preventing misuse, specifically citing opportunistic claims of conversion to avoid creditors, for instance.
So the court had these competing arguments. While upholding the usual presumption that laws are constitutional, they also warned about serious consequences without safeguards. What did they actually stay?
Okay, so they put a hold on specific parts. First, the expanded powers of district collector under Section 3C. The court found it prima facie arbitrary for an executive officer to decide complex property title issues.
That seems like a big deal for separation of powers.
It is. But they put safeguards in place for the interim. No dispossession of Waqf properties, but custodians can't create new third-party rights. And importantly, ST land or protected monuments cannot be declared Waqf.
What about that 5-year practicing Muslim rule?
This was interesting. The court actually declined to strike it down completely at this stage. They acknowledged the government's justification about preventing misuse. However,
There's a but.
a significant but. They suspended its operation until the center creates clear rules on how to verify someone is practicing and for how long, noting no procedure currently exists. So it's on hold due to lack of clarity. They also reiterated only your own property can be dedicated as a Waqf.
And the inclusion of non-Muslims on the boards.
The court didn't ban it, but limited it. A maximum of 4 non-Muslims on the 22-member Central Council, max 3 on the 11-member state boards. And they suggested the CEO of a Waqf board should preferably be Muslim, walking back the act's removal of that preference.
So some parts stayed, others allowed to continue. What remained in force from the act?
A few key things, seemingly aligning with the government's goal of curbing mismanagement. The court didn't suspend the derecognition of Waqf by user going forward.
Meaning you can't just claim land as Waqf because it's been used that way for ages.
Prospectively, yes. The court agreed that doctrine was often exploited to claim government land, citing a 2022 case. Registration on the Central Digital Portal was upheld for transparency, noting it's been required since 1923 anyway.
And the Limitation Act.
They refused to stay its application. So the standard 12-year limit for property claims now applies to Waqf property too, removing the exemption the 1995 Act had provided. Uniformity was the principle there.
Given this is just an interim order, how should we interpret it? Academic Faizan Mustafa offered some thoughts.
Yes, he cautioned against reading too much into it yet. But he did praise the court's stance on the collector's powers as upholding the separation of powers.
Though he was critical of the 5-year rule.
He called it potential policing of private religious choices, even while welcoming the check on executive power. It just shows how complex these cases are.
Absolutely. It highlights that constant tension, doesn't it, between government reform efforts, community autonomy, and protecting fundamental rights in a diverse society. It makes you wonder, what makes navigating these legal interpretations in such sensitive areas so intricate, and why do they have such far-reaching effects? You know, looking across all these topics today, the governor's role, Iran's crisis, welfare tech, disease links, the Waqf Act, there's a common thread. It's about institutions, whether courts or governments or international bodies, constantly trying to balance core principles against shifting realities.
Balancing rights against efficiency, sovereignty against oversight, tradition against reform.
It really makes you pause and reflect. As our world keeps changing with new tech, new global challenges, how do we make sure that progress or control doesn't end up costing us our fundamental rights and our human dignity? It's a question worth pondering. Thank you for listening. If you want to provide suggestions, please contact on the Twitter handle given in the episode description. As always, we are eager to hear what our listeners want to be informed about. We wish you a great day.